The late-night studio lights cast a blue haze across the set of Jimmy Kimmel Live as the cameras panned across the enthusiastic audience. Their excitement was palpable, many having come specifically to see Jonathan Roumie, the actor whose portrayal of Jesus in the global phenomenon, The Chosen, had captured the hearts of millions worldwide. Backstage, Jonathan took a deep breath, aware that late-night appearances could be unpredictable. What he couldn't know was that in just minutes, his deepest beliefs would be challenged on national television in a way that would leave even the most cynical viewers stunned. The production assistant gave Jonathan his 2-minute warning as Jimmy Kimmel reviewed his note cards, a subtle smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. The host had prepared something special for tonight's guest, not the usual lighthearted banter, but a series of increasingly pointed questions designed to expose what Kimmel privately referred to as the hypocrisy of Hollywood Christianity. As Jonathan was led to the side of the stage, studio executives watched nervously from the shadows. They had cautioned Kimmel about his planned approach, warning that religious topics could alienate viewers, but the host had insisted. "Trust me," he told them, "this will be a viral moment." He couldn't have known how prophetic those words would prove, though not for the reasons he anticipated. The audience applauded as Kimmel welcomed Jonathan with a handshake that seemed genuine enough, though keen observers might have noticed the host's unusually intense eye contact, the subtle tension in his posture. The first few minutes flowed with practiced ease. Discussion of the show's success, playful anecdotes from the set, audience laughter on cue. Then came the pivot. "So, Jonathan," Kimmel said, his voice taking on an edge that regular viewers recognized as the prelude to confrontation, "you play Jesus on TV, but I've got to ask about something that's been bothering me." The studio fell silent as cameras captured the exact moment Jonathan realized this wasn't going to be the friendly conversation he had expected. What happened in the next 4 minutes would not only silence a notoriously quick-witted host, but would transform a potential ambush into one of the most profound moments ever captured on late-night television. A moment that would be referenced in seminary classes, debated in social media forums, and even change how some of Hollywood's most hardened cynics viewed faith in the entertainment industry. By morning, the clip would rack up millions of views, and one of America's most prominent atheist commentators would admit, "I've never seen faith defended like this before." Have you ever witnessed someone face public ridicule for their faith and respond with such authentic grace that it silenced an entire room? This is precisely what unfolded when Jonathan Roumie sat across from Jimmy Kimmel, only to be blindsided by questions designed to mock rather than understand his deeply held beliefs. What Kimmel intended as entertainment at a Christian's expense transformed into something far more powerful. A moment of genuine wisdom that transcended the usual celebrity banter. That morning, Jonathan had knelt in prayer in his hotel room, something that had become ritual since landing the role that changed his life. "Lord, let me represent you faithfully today," he whispered, unaware of how directly that prayer would be tested. Hours later, millions would watch as a prepared ambush collapsed under the weight of a response so sincere that even Kimmel's writers, notorious for their cynical wit, would find themselves speechless. The stakes weren't merely about defending religious beliefs on a comedy show. They represented the larger cultural battle between faith and mockery, between soundbite skepticism and thoughtful conviction. What happened that night would not only change Jonathan's career trajectory, but would force many to reconsider their assumptions about Christians in Hollywood. Within days, the 4-minute exchange would be studied in communications classes as the perfect example of how grace under pressure can disarm even the most calculated criticism. 5 years earlier, Jonathan Roumie had faced financial ruin. His acting career had stalled so completely that eviction notices papered his apartment door. "I had $20 in my bank account," he later revealed. "I'd sold my furniture, was skipping meals, and my phone service had been cut off." That desperate night, Alone in his nearly empty apartment, Jonathan surrendered completely. "God, I have nothing left. My career is in your hands," he prayed through tears. What happened next defied explanation. A random check arrived the following day from a residual he didn't know existed, enough to cover rent. 3 months later, he received the call about The Chosen. The show's unprecedented success, nearly 1 billion views worldwide, translated into 50 languages, had catapulted Jonathan into unexpected fame. Yet even as his career soared, he remained open about his faith, a rarity in an industry where religious conviction is often hidden or downplayed. As Jonathan was led through the backstage corridors of Jimmy Kimmel Live, he could hear the audience's excitement. A production assistant reviewed talking points, the show's latest season, his unexpected journey to stardom, fan reactions to his portrayal of Jesus. Nothing in that briefing hinted at what was coming. The segment began pleasantly enough with a clip from The Chosen, showing Jesus confronting religious hypocrisy. The audience applauded as Jimmy welcomed Jonathan with seeming warmth. "So, this show has basically broken the internet," Jimmy began. "You've got more views than cat videos." The audience laughed appreciatively. Jonathan smiled, deflecting praise to the show's creator and writing team. For several minutes, the interview proceeded normally, with lighthearted questions about fans who confused him with Jesus and comedic stories from the set. Then came a subtle shift in Kimmel's demeanor. He leaned forward, his expression changing as he prepared to take the conversation in a dramatically different direction. "You know, Jonathan," he began, "I've noticed something interesting about religious folks in Hollywood." The studio grew quieter as the audience sensed the abrupt tonal change. The trap was set, the cameras rolling, and now everything depended on how Jonathan would respond to what came next. "You know, Jonathan," Kimmel continued, his voice taking on an edge that his regular viewers instantly recognized. "I find it fascinating that you're part of this religious phenomenon when Christianity has become so political in America." The audience tensed, sensing the conversation's sudden sharp turn. "The Jesus you play heals the sick for free, yet many Christians oppose universal health care." He paused, eyes locked on Jonathan. "Isn't that hypocritical?" A few audience members shifted uncomfortably, while others nodded in agreement. The studio grew unnervingly quiet. Kimmel wasn't finished. "And let's talk about the prosperity gospel preachers with private jets, while Jesus told people to sell everything." His tone grew more explicitly mocking. "How do you square that circle? Playing a homeless carpenter who told people to help the poor, while megachurch pastors live in mansions." A nervous chuckle rippled through parts of the audience. The cameras captured the precise moment. Kimmel leaning back slightly, satisfied with his questioning, the production team watching nervously from the wings, and Jonathan's expression, which displayed neither anger nor panic, but something far more unexpected: compassion. There was a deliberate pause as Jonathan considered his response. The producers tensed, fearing a PR disaster unfolding live, either an awkward defense of religious hypocrisy or an angry rebuke that would alienate viewers. The trap was perfectly laid. No matter how Jonathan responded, it seemed he would either betray his faith or confirm stereotypes about judgmental Christians. 3 studio executives exchanged glances, one mouthing, "I told you so," to another who had approved the confrontational approach. Kimmel himself appeared momentarily uncertain as Jonathan's silence stretched for 5 full seconds, an eternity in television time. Then, Jonathan leaned forward, his eyes meeting Kimmel's directly. "Jimmy," he began in a voice both gentle and resolute, "that's actually a profound question." What followed in the next 90 seconds would leave everyone in the studio, including its famously quick-witted host, completely silent. "Jimmy," Jonathan began with unexpected warmth, "you're highlighting something Jesus himself confronted constantly: the gap between what we profess and how we live." His eyes remained steady, his voice neither defensive nor combative. The Jesus I portray in The Chosen regularly challenged religious leaders who created burdens for others while seeking privilege for themselves. He leaned forward slightly. So, your criticism isn't just fair, it's biblical. Kimmel blinked, clearly thrown by this concession, rather than the defensive response he'd anticipated. But there's something I've learned playing this role that's changed me profoundly, Jonathan continued. Before I was cast as Jesus, I was completely broke. The candor of this personal revelation shifted the atmosphere instantly. 6 years ago, I had lost everything. My apartment, my car, even food in my refrigerator. His voice carried no self-pity, only authenticity. I had nothing left when I finally surrendered everything to God. The studio had fallen completely silent. Kimmel's prepared follow-up questions forgotten, as he listened with genuine interest. That very day, and I mean this literally, an unexpected check arrived that kept me from homelessness. 3 months later, I was cast in The Chosen. Jonathan's expression grew more earnest. So, when you ask about hypocrisy, I understand the question because I've asked it myself. I've seen faith used as a weapon and a political tool. I've seen wealth pursued in the name of blessing. A subtle but profound shift had occurred. What began as an ambush had transformed into one of the most authentic conversations ever broadcast on late-night television. But what drew me to Jesus wasn't perfect Christians. It was his compassion for imperfect ones. He reserved his harshest words, not for those struggling with faith, but for religious hypocrites who used faith for power or profit. Jonathan paused briefly. That challenges me daily. Am I using this platform to elevate myself, or to point to something greater? Am I practicing the grace I preach? The humility in his words was palpable. Playing Jesus hasn't made me a better Christian. It's made me more aware of how deeply I need grace myself. As Jonathan finished speaking, something extraordinary happened. Jimmy Kimmel, known for his quick comebacks and sarcastic retorts, sat in complete silence for a full 3 seconds before simply saying, "That's not what I expected." The audience, equally stunned, remained quiet until someone in the back began to applaud, triggering a wave that spread throughout the studio. The cameras caught Kimmel's expression, a mixture of surprise and something resembling respect, as he realized his planned gotcha moment had been transformed into something genuinely meaningful. By morning, the 4-minute exchange had exploded across social media. This is what genuine faith looks like. One viral tweet with 2 million views declared, "No defensiveness, no culture war rhetoric, just authentic grace under pressure." The clip was being shared by both religious and secular audiences, something almost unheard of in today's polarized media landscape. Industry insiders took notice. "I've interviewed hundreds of celebrities caught in tough moments," wrote one prominent entertainment journalist. "I've never seen anyone transform a potential PR disaster into a masterclass on authentic communication like Jonathan Roumie just did." Behind the scenes, Jimmy Kimmel's reaction proved even more telling. As the cameras stopped rolling, he extended his hand to Jonathan with uncharacteristic sincerity. "That wasn't what I expected," Kimmel admitted quietly, keeping his voice low. "You didn't take the bait on any of my questions." A production assistant later revealed that Kimmel spent nearly 15 minutes with Jonathan after the show, an extraordinarily long time for the busy host to spend with any guest. What they discussed remains private, but 3 weeks later, a staff writer for the show shared anonymously that something had shifted in their approach to religious topics. "There's a before Jonathan and after Jonathan in our writer's room now," they revealed. "The easy jokes about Christians don't land the same way anymore." The impact extended far beyond a single television moment. Seminary professors began using the clip to teach pastoral students about responding to criticism. Communication classes studied it as a perfect example of disarming with agreement, a technique rarely executed with such genuine skill. Perhaps most remarkably, A Hollywood director, known for his skeptical portrayal of religion, sent Jonathan a private message. "I've mocked Christianity my entire career, but your interview made me question my assumptions for the first time." Meanwhile, Jonathan himself maintained his characteristic humility. When asked about the viral moment in subsequent interviews, he consistently redirected attention away from himself. "I'm just grateful the conversation opened doors for more nuanced discussions of faith in the public square," he responded, refusing to frame the exchange as any kind of personal victory. 6 weeks later, after declining numerous requests, Jonathan returned to Kimmel's show. The atmosphere was markedly different. Less tension, more genuine curiosity, as Kimmel asked thoughtful questions about Jesus' revolutionary approach to women and social outcasts in first-century Palestine. Viewership for that episode broke the show's previous records, suggesting a hunger for meaningful conversations about faith beyond the usual political framings. The story of Jonathan Roumie's unexpected exchange with Jimmy Kimmel stands as a powerful reminder of what becomes possible when criticism meets grace instead of defensiveness. In a cultural moment defined by outrage and division, particularly around matters of faith, his response offered a glimpse of a different path. "I've spent my career playing Jesus," Jonathan reflected months later at a fan convention. "But the greatest challenge isn't portraying his power. It's embodying his compassion for critics." This insight cuts to the heart of why his response resonated so deeply with millions across the belief spectrum. He didn't win the exchange by defeating Kimmel's arguments. He transformed it by refusing to see Kimmel as an opponent at all. The impact of this approach extends far beyond a single television appearance. When faced with legitimate criticism of religious hypocrisy, Jonathan chose neither defensive justification nor counterattack, but thoughtful acknowledgement. When confronted with mockery, he responded with vulnerable authenticity rather than rehearsed talking points. When given a platform, he redirected attention from himself to deeper principles that transcend both religious and secular tribalism. These choices created space for genuine dialogue in an environment typically hostile to nuanced discussions of faith. "The most compelling witness isn't answering every criticism perfectly," noted one religious commentator, "but responding to critics with the same grace you claim your faith is built upon." Jonathan's example challenges believers not to better arguments, but to more authentic living, aligning stated beliefs with visible actions in a way that speaks louder than words alone could ever accomplish. Beyond religious circles, his approach offers a template for navigating disagreements in a polarized world. Acknowledging legitimate criticism, sharing personal vulnerability, and responding with compassion rather than contempt. These principles apply far beyond discussions of faith to any divided discourse. Have you ever witnessed criticism of your deeply held beliefs? How did you respond? With defensive justification, angry counterattack, or the kind of disarming grace Jonathan demonstrated? His example reminds us that sometimes the most powerful response to skepticism isn't cleverness, but authenticity, not winning the argument, but transforming the conversation itself. Like, subscribe, and share if you believe our divided culture needs more voices that bridge understanding rather than deepen divides, and more people willing to respond to criticism, not with perfect arguments, but with genuine grace.